The cabin hums at 35,000 feet, a mechanical lullaby of wealth and comfort. First-class passengers recline in leather seats wide enough to forget anyone else exists. Ice clinks in crystal glasses. Laptops glow with spreadsheets and streaming shows. The lighting is warm, amber, expensive. Flight attendant Rebecca Thornton glides down the aisle with practiced grace. Her uniform is immaculate. Royal blue blazer, silk scarf knotted perfectly at her throat. 15 years of service shows in every movement. She's performed this dance 1,000 times. She reaches row 3 and pauses. Seat 3A holds a boy, 10 years old, small for his age, dark brown skin, black hair cropped close. He's reading a book about space exploration, his finger tracing the words. Worn sneakers dangle above the footrest. His backpack sits beneath the seat, fraying at one corner. Marcus looks up and smiles. "Excuse me, ma'am. Could I have my meal now?" Rebecca's professional smile flickers. Her eyes travel from his face to his clothes, to his sneakers and back. The warmth drains from her expression like water from a cracked glass. "This section is for paying passengers," she says. Her voice carries, not loud but sharp enough to cut through nearby conversations. Marcus blinks. Confusion clouds his face. I have a ticket. I'm in first class." Rebecca's lips press into a thin line. She glances at the passenger across the aisle, an older white woman in pearls and cashmere, her magazine forgotten. Their eyes meet. Rebecca's expression says, "You see what I'm dealing with?" The woman offers a tight, uncomfortable smile and looks away. Rebecca turns back to Marcus. "I'm going to need to see your boarding pass." The temperature in the cabin drops 10 degrees. 40 minutes earlier, Marcus had walked down the jet bridge with his heart hammering against his ribs. His father's hand rested briefly on his shoulder. Warm, steady, reassuring. "You've got this, buddy," David Chen Williams said. His voice was deep, calm. The same voice that commanded boardrooms and investor calls. "Window seat, just like I promised. Be yourself. Be brave." Marcus nodded, trying to match his father's confidence. This was his first solo flight, 10 years old and flying alone to visit his grandmother in Atlanta. She'd been counting down the days on the phone, her excitement infectious. My big boy coming all by himself. David had purchased seat 3A specifically. The window seat. First class. He wanted Marcus to experience comfort, to feel what belonging looked like at altitude. He wanted his son to know that spaces like this weren't closed to people who looked like them. Not anymore. Not if David had anything to say about it. David's own seat was 10C, 7 rows back. He'd chosen the separation deliberately. Marcus needed to learn independence, needed to navigate the world without his father's shadow protecting him every moment. It was a gift and a test wrapped together. As Marcus settled into 3A, David watched from the boarding queue, watched his son's eyes widen at the leather seat, the touchscreen, the menu card in the seat pocket, watched him pull out his book and lose himself in descriptions of distant galaxies. Pride swelled in David's chest, bittersweet and fierce. The flight attendant had smiled at David during boarding. Rebecca, her name tag read, professional, warm, efficient. She'd welcomed him aboard without a second glance. He was wearing a tailored charcoal suit, Italian shoes, a watch that cost more than most people's monthly rent. She'd seen those markers and nodded him through like he belonged, because in her eyes, he did. David had built Horizon Airways from venture capital and vision, a black CEO in an industry where boardrooms were still overwhelmingly white. He'd fought for every seat at every table. He'd implemented diversity training, bias protocols, inclusive hiring practices. He'd believed his reforms mattered. He'd believed his airline was different. Now, settling into 10C, he opened his laptop and tried to focus on quarterly reports. But his attention kept drifting forward, toward row 3, toward his son. Marcus's hands shake slightly as he pulls out his phone. The screen illuminates his face, highlighting the confusion, the first threads of fear. He opens his digital boarding pass and holds it up. Rebecca barely glances at it. Her eyes skim the screen for half a second before she shakes her head. "This must be an error," she says. The certainty in her voice is absolute. Children flying alone in first class are always accompanied by an adult guardian. That's policy. Marcus's voice comes out smaller than he wants. "My dad's on the plane. He's just sitting in a different row. He wanted me to—" "Of course he is." Rebecca's tone drips with disbelief. She turns to the businessman in 3C, her voice softening immediately. "Sir, I apologize for the disruption. We're sorting out a seating confusion." The man grunts acknowledgement, his attention already back on his tablet. Rebecca looks down at Marcus again. "I'm going to need you to come with me to economy class until we can verify your ticket with the gate agent." The word verify hangs in the air like an accusation. Like Marcus is guilty until proven innocent. Like his presence here requires explanation and proof. "But I didn't do anything wrong," Marcus says. His voice cracks slightly. "My ticket is real. My dad bought it." "Sweetheart." Rebecca's endearment sounds like an insult. "I'm sure there's a simple explanation. For right now I need you to gather your things and follow me." A woman 2 rows up glances back, her expression uncomfortable. She looks like she might say something, but her husband touches her arm and she turns away. Marcus doesn't move. "Can you just ask my dad?" "He's in 10C, David Williams." Rebecca's patience visibly thins. Her jaw tightens. "Young man, I don't have time for games. Either you move voluntarily, or I'll have to involve the captain. It's a threat." Clear and unmistakable. Marcus's eyes begin to water. Not from fear, but from rage he doesn't yet have words for. From injustice that tastes like metal on his tongue. From the understanding creeping in like cold water that this woman has already decided who he is based on nothing but what she sees. He grips his armrest. His knuckles go pale. Another flight attendant approaches, younger, nervous, carrying a tablet. His name tag reads James. Rebecca doesn't wait for him to speak. "James, can you check the manifest?" This child claims he has a first-class ticket, but clearly there's been some sort of mix-up. James looks at Marcus, then at his tablet. His face changes, surprise, then concern. "Rebecca, the ticket is valid. Marcus Williams, seat 3A, paid in full." "Just escort him to economy," Rebecca cuts him off. "We'll sort it out there. First class is for premium passengers." Her emphasis on premium lands like a slap. Marcus's face burns. He can feel every set of eyes on him now, some curious, some uncomfortable, most carefully averted. He's a spectacle, a problem, something that doesn't fit the aesthetic of leather and ambient lighting. His father taught him to speak up, to stand firm, to never shrink himself for other people's comfort. But right now his voice feels trapped behind the lump swelling in his throat. He thinks of his grandmother waiting at the airport in Atlanta. She'd been so excited on FaceTime this morning, already wearing her church hat even though it was only Thursday. "My grandson flying first class." Your grandfather would have been so proud. He thinks of his father's words before boarding. "Show them who you are, son. Show them you belong." But who is he in this woman's eyes? Not a child with a valid ticket. Not someone's grandson or son. Just a mistake, an anomaly. Something out of place that needs to be corrected, removed, hidden away where it won't disturb the other passengers. His fingers dig into the leather armrest. The cabin feels smaller now, hotter. The air tastes recycled and thin. He hears his own heartbeat pounding in his ears, louder than the engine's steady drone. Across the aisle, the woman in pearls shifts in her seat and opens her magazine. She doesn't look at him again. Marcus understands something in that moment, something his father has tried to shield him from for 10 years. He understands that some people will always see him as less, that no ticket, no boarding pass, no amount of belonging will change certain minds. The knowledge settles into his chest like a stone. 7 rows back, David hears everything. The cabin acoustics in first class are designed for privacy, but Rebecca's voice carries. Every word reaches him with crystal clarity. The disbelief, the dismissal, the casual cruelty wrapped in professional courtesy. He recognizes that tone immediately. He's heard it 1,000 times. In boardrooms where he was the only black executive, at conferences where security asked for his badge twice, in restaurants where hostesses assumed he was there for a delivery, in first-class cabins before he owned the airline. The sound of his own assumptions shattering is almost audible. David built Horizon Airways on principles. When he took over the struggling regional carrier 8 years ago, he'd made diversity and inclusion cornerstones of the rebrand. Mandatory bias training, diverse hiring initiatives, customer equity protocols. He'd consulted experts, spent millions on implementation, tracked metrics quarterly. He'd believed it was working. He'd believed his airline was different. He'd chosen this specific flight for Marcus as a teaching moment, showing his son that spaces like this were theirs to occupy, that the world was changing, that his father's work mattered. Now, listening to a flight attendant profile his 10-year-old son, David understands how naive that belief was. You can change policies, but changing hearts takes longer, sometimes generations longer. His hands clench around his armrest. Rage builds in his chest, heart volcanic, barely contained. But he doesn't move yet. He needs to see how far this goes. He needs to know if anyone will intervene. He needs to understand exactly what his reforms have accomplished, which is to say nothing where it matters most. A businessman nearby recognizes David, does a double take, starts to speak. David raises one finger to his lips. Not yet. The man nods and looks away, confusion clear on his face. David stands slowly, silently. He moves into the aisle, eyes locked on row 3. On his son's small frame, rigid with humiliation. On Rebecca's hand reaching toward Marcus's backpack. Every step forward feels like walking through fire. Please don't touch my bag. Marcus's voice surprises everyone, including himself. It comes out stronger than he feels. Steady. Rebecca's hand freezes mid-air. Her smile is patronizing, almost pitying. Sweetheart, I'm just trying to help you get settled in your proper seat. This is my proper seat. James shifts his weight, looking between them. His tablet screen glows with the manifest. Marcus Williams confirmed, paid in full. But he doesn't speak. The hierarchy is clear. Rebecca has seniority. Rebecca makes the calls. A businessman in row 4 clears his throat uncomfortably. Another passenger pretends to be absorbed in her phone. The silence in the cabin is thick, charged, waiting. Rebecca's patience cracks. Young man, I don't have time for this debate. Either you move voluntarily, or I'll have the captain make an announcement. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. The threat hangs there, sharp and unmistakable. Marcus's eyes water. Not from fear. From rage he's too young to fully process. From injustice that burns like acid. His father taught him to stand up for himself. But what does that mean when adults won't listen? When the rules apply differently depending on who's invoking them? He looks at James. You saw my ticket. You said it was valid. James opens his mouth, closes it, looks at Rebecca. The moment stretches, painful and revealing. James, Rebecca's voice drops, icy. Are you questioning my judgment? James steps back. The conflict on his face is clear, knowing what's right, choosing what's safe. Marcus watches this moment, watches an adult choose silence over justice. The lesson burns itself into his memory, deeper than any his father could teach. Rebecca reaches for Marcus's backpack again, and then David's voice cuts through the cabin. Quiet. Measured, devastating, that won't be necessary. Rebecca turns. Her professional smile activates reflexively, muscle memory from 15 years of service. Then recognition hits. Her smile falters. David Williams, CEO, her boss's boss's boss. But the recognition brings confusion, not alarm. Why would the CEO care about this? She hasn't made the connection yet. Hasn't understood the catastrophic mistake she's made. Mr. Williams. She straightens, smoothing her blazer. I apologize for any disruption. We're just addressing a ticketing error with this child. Nothing to concern yourself with, this child. Not a passenger. Not Marcus. This child. David takes another step forward. The cabin is dead silent now. Passengers sense something monumental unfolding, though they can't quite name it yet. There is no error. Ms. Thornton. His voice remains quiet, calm. The kind of calm that precedes earthquakes. That child. David's emphasis on her own words is surgical. Is my son. His name is Marcus. His ticket is valid. His seat is paid for. And I've been sitting 7 rows back for the past 20 minutes, listening to you deny him service, question his legitimacy, and threaten him with removal. The color drains from Rebecca's face. Around them, the cabin freezes. Drinks pause halfway to lips. Tablets stop mid-scroll. The woman in pearls inhales sharply. James closes his eyes. Marcus looks at his father. Tears finally spill over, hot against his cheeks. David doesn't break eye contact with Rebecca. When he speaks again, his voice could cut glass. You challenged his boarding pass without proper cause. You dismissed your colleague's verification. You threatened to involve the captain over a black child asking for his meal. And you did all of this. David's voice cracks slightly just for a moment. To my 10-year-old son while he was sitting alone, being polite, doing absolutely nothing wrong. Rebecca's mouth opens. No sound comes out. My office. When we land. Don't speak to my son again during this flight. David moves past her to Marcus's row. He settles into the empty seat beside his son and pulls him close. Marcus's shoulders shake silently. The cabin remains frozen. No one speaks. No one moves. Rebecca stands in the aisle, her world collapsing in real time, finally understanding the magnitude of what she's done, finally understanding that assumptions have consequences, finally understanding that this moment will cost her everything. Rebecca stumbles backward, her heel catching on the carpet. She catches herself on a seat back. The passenger flinches away from her touch. James moves forward tentatively. Mr. Williams, I tried to tell her the ticket was... David raises his hand. I heard you, James, I heard you try. His voice softens slightly. Thank you for that. James nods, relief and guilt warring on his face. He retreats to the galley. Rebecca finds her voice. It comes out strangled, desperate. Sir, I was just following protocol. Unaccompanied minors in first class require verification. I was doing my job. David doesn't look at her. He's focused on Marcus, wiping tears from his son's face with gentle thumbs. But his words are for Rebecca, cold and precise. Your job is to serve passengers, not profile them, not make assumptions based on how they look, not question valid tickets because a child doesn't match your mental image of who belongs in first class. I wasn't... Rebecca's voice breaks. It wasn't about race. It was policy. Now David does look at her. His gaze is steady, unflinching, filled with the weight of 1,000 similar moments across a lifetime. Then explain why you verified his boarding pass for less than 2 seconds before deciding it was an error. Explain why you softened your voice for the white passengers, but sharpened it for my son. Explain why you ignored James when he confirmed the ticket's validity. Rebecca's mouth opens and closes silently. That's what I thought. David turns back to Marcus. We're done here, Ms. Thornton. The dismissal is absolute. Rebecca backs away down the aisle. Her legs feel disconnected from her body. The other passengers won't meet her eyes now. She's gone from authority figure to pariah in 60 seconds. She reaches the galley and grips the counter. Her hands won't stop shaking. The flight continues in eerie quiet. Passengers whisper to each other. Their conversations a low hum of speculation and discomfort. Several people have their phones out, typing furiously. The story is already spreading. David orders Marcus's meal. When it arrives, brought by James, not Rebecca, Marcus stares at the pasta without touching it. I'm not hungry anymore, he says quietly. David's heart breaks. I know, buddy. I know. Did I do something wrong? No. David's voice is fierce. Never think that. Not even for a second. Then why did she... Marcus can't finish the sentence. David takes a breath. This is the conversation he'd hoped to delay for a few more years. But childhood ends when it ends, not when parents are ready. Because some people carry ideas about who deserves what, about who belongs where. And sometimes those ideas are stronger than the truth right in front of them. She looked at you and made assumptions. That's on her, Marcus, not you. Marcus nods slowly, processing. Will she get in trouble? Yes. Will she lose her job? David pauses. Honesty is painful but necessary. Probably. Marcus is quiet for a long moment. Then, I don't want her to lose her job because of me. And there it is. His son's empathy, even in the face of cruelty. David pulls him closer. It's not because of you. It's because of her choices. You asked for a meal. She chose to see that as a problem. You showed your ticket. She chose not to believe it. You have nothing to feel guilty about. In the galley, Rebecca watches them through the curtain. The intimacy between father and son, the tenderness she denied existed, lands like a physical blow. James approaches her, his voice low. You should stay in the back for the rest of the flight. I know, her voice is barely audible. Rebecca, why didn't you just look at the ticket? Why didn't you listen when I told you? I don't know. The admission comes out broken. I just assumed, yeah. James's disappointment is clear. You did. He leaves her there alone with the consequences of her assumptions. The plane begins its descent. The seatbelt sign illuminates. In seat 3A, Marcus leans against his father's shoulder and closes his eyes. In the galley, Rebecca's 15-year career crumbles around her like ash. The landing is smooth. The deplaning is silent, and Rebecca knows with absolute certainty that her life just changed forever. The jetway feels endless. Rebecca walks it in a daze, her rolling suitcase catching on the carpet seam. Other crew members move past her without speaking. The captain gave her a look as she exited the cockpit, disappointment mixed with something that looked like pity. Her phone buzzes. A text from the crew supervisor. Report to airport HR immediately. Do not leave the terminal. The administrative office is on the 3rd floor past security, tucked between a closed bookstore and a coffee shop. Rebecca has walked past it 1,000 times and never once imagined she'd be summoned there. The waiting room is empty, except for her. Grey chairs, fluorescent lighting, a water cooler that hums in the corner. She sits with her hands folded in her lap, still in her uniform, still wearing the silk scarf knotted perfectly at her throat. Her reflection stares back from the darkened window. She sees herself as she was an hour ago, confident, certain, in control. She doesn't recognize that person anymore. The door opens. A woman in a business suit gestures her inside. Miss Thornton, this way. Rebecca stands on legs that don't feel like her own. The interrogation, because that's what it is, despite the gentle language, lasts 40 minutes. They show her the cabin camera footage. They read her passenger complaints on file. They cite company policy, discrimination protocols, bias training she completed 6 months ago. Do you remember this training, Ms. Thornton? Yes. And do you remember the section on passenger profiling? Yes. Then can you explain why you demanded boarding pass verification from a black child, but not from any other passenger in that section? Rebecca opens her mouth, closes it. She has no answer that doesn't condemn her. The silence stretches like pulled taffy, painful and exposing. She's suspended immediately, pending full investigation. Her security badge is deactivated, her employee access revoked. She leaves through a side exit, carrying 15 years of her life in a canvas tote bag. Outside, the evening air is cool and indifferent. Planes take off overhead, their lights blinking against the darkening sky. Rebecca sits on a concrete bench and finally lets herself cry. David's mother-in-law lives in a craftsman house with a garden that could grace magazine covers. Jasmine climbs the front porch. Wind chimes sing in the breeze. She opens the door before they reach it, arms already wide. My baby. She sweeps Marcus into a hug that lifts him off the ground despite her 72 years. "Let me look at you." "Getting so big!" Marcus manages a smile, but it doesn't reach his eyes. She looks at David over Marcus's head. Her expression shifts. Grandmother's intuition reading trouble like a weather system. "What happened?" David waits until Marcus is in the kitchen with cookies and milk before he explains. His mother-in-law listens without interrupting, her face hardening with each detail. "That woman," she finally says, her voice tight. "That woman made my grandson cry. I know, Mama. You're going to handle this. I'm going to handle this." She nods once, sharp. "Good. Because if you don't, I will." David almost smiles, almost. That night, after Marcus is asleep in the guest room, David sits at the kitchen table with his laptop and 3 phones. He makes calls, pulls files, reviews policies he helped write and clearly need to be rewritten. The head of HR picks up on the first ring. "David, I heard. I want a full investigation. Every complaint filed against Rebecca Thornton. Every instance where passenger demographics matched with service discrepancies. I want the data. You'll have it by morning. I want the bias training curriculum reviewed by an outside consultant. I want to know where it's failing. Consider it done. And I want every flight attendant to know that discrimination has consequences. Real ones, not just retraining and second chances. If we're going to claim we're inclusive, we need to prove it." There's a pause. "Then, this is personal for you. It's personal for every black parent who has to explain to their child why they were treated like a criminal for existing." "Yes, it's personal." David hangs up and pulls up the next contact. The VP of Operations answers despite the late hour. They talk for 90 minutes. By the end, the framework is clear. Mandatory recertification for all flight attendants, anonymous passenger feedback systems, quarterly audits of service patterns by demographic. It won't fix everything, but it's a start. David closes his laptop at 2 in the morning. Through the window, he can see the guest room light still on. He walks down the hall and knocks softly. "Come in," Marcus says. David finds his son sitting cross-legged on the bed, the space book open on his lap. "Can't sleep?" David asks. "I keep thinking about her face." When she realized, David sits on the edge of the bed. "Yeah, me too. Do you think she's sorry?" "I think she's scared. Whether that becomes sorry depends on what she does next." Marcus closes the book. "Dad, will this keep happening? People looking at me and deciding I don't belong?" The question cuts deep because the answer is yes. Sometimes probably, but you know what? You'll keep proving them wrong. Every time. And maybe some of them will learn. That's exhausting. David laughs sadly. "Yeah, buddy. It really is." They sit together in the quiet, father and son, carrying weight that shouldn't be theirs to carry but is. The conference room at Horizon Airways headquarters is designed for difficult conversations. Sound-proofed walls, a table that seats 12, a screen mounted for presentations. Rebecca sits on one side, her union representative beside her. Across the table, David, the head of HR and the chief legal counsel. 3 days have passed since the flight. 3 days of Rebecca replaying every moment, every word, every assumption. 3 days of insomnia and anxiety and dread. David doesn't look at her as he enters. He sets a folder on the table and remains standing. "Ms. Thornton, thank you for coming. Before we begin, I want to be clear. This is not a negotiation. This is a presentation of facts and consequences. You're welcome to respond, but the investigation is complete." Rebecca's representative starts to object. David cuts him off. The camera footage from the flight has been reviewed by 3 separate parties. "We're going to watch it now." The screen illuminates. The footage plays. Every damning moment in high definition. Rebecca watches herself approach Marcus, watches her expression change when she sees him, the subtle shift from professional warmth to suspicion, watches herself barely glance at his boarding pass before declaring it an error. The audio is crystal clear. "This section is for paying passengers." Rebecca flinches, The footage continues. Her dismissive tone with Marcus, her softened voice for the white passenger, her threat to involve the captain, James trying to intervene, her shutting him down, then David's arrival, the color draining from her face. The moment of recognition and devastation. The video ends. The silence in the room is suffocating. David finally looks at her. This is the 4th complaint of discriminatory behavior filed against you in 3 years, Miss Thornton. The first 3 were resolved with retraining. You passed every certification, scored high on cultural competency assessments. On paper, you understood everything we taught you. He opens the folder, slides papers across the table. But understanding concepts and changing behavior are different things. Here's the pattern. Every passenger you've questioned, delayed, or denied service to over the past 3 years has been a person of color. Every single one. The statistical probability of that being coincidence is effectively 0. Rebecca's lawyer shifts uncomfortably. Mr. Williams, my client has acknowledged this was a mistake in judgment. It wasn't a mistake. David's voice is quiet, controlled, devastating. It was a choice. She looked at my 10-year-old son and chose to see a problem instead of a passenger. She chose to doubt his legitimacy. She chose to threaten him rather than simply serve him the meal he politely requested. He leans forward, hands flat on the table. And here's what makes this particularly egregious. That child was doing nothing wrong. He wasn't being loud. He wasn't being disruptive. He was sitting quietly, reading a book, existing. And that was too much for you to accept, because he didn't match your mental image of who belongs in first class. Rebecca's voice finally emerges, broken and small. I didn't mean to. I wasn't thinking about race. I just thought... You thought what, Miss Thornton? I assumed he was in the wrong seat. That maybe he'd wandered from economy. Kids do that sometimes. White kids wander from economy and you help them find their parents. Black kids sit in their assigned first-class seat and you threaten them with removal. Do you see the difference? Rebecca's face crumples. I didn't mean it that way, but that's exactly how it happened. Intent doesn't erase impact. David straightens. His voice remains measured, but the emotion underneath is volcanic. This wasn't just about policy violation, Miss Thornton. You humiliated a child. My child. And you did it in front of a cabin full of people who now have a story about how Horizon Airways treats black passengers. Do you understand the damage you've done? Not just to Marcus, but to everything we've tried to build. Rebecca is crying now, quiet tears streaming down her face. David's voice drops even lower. My son asked me if you'd lose your job. Do you know what that tells me? That despite everything you did to him, he's worried about you. He has more compassion at 10 than you've shown in 15 years of service. The room falls silent, except for Rebecca's muffled sobs. David closes the folder. Your employment with Horizon Airways is terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building. Your benefits package will be explained separately. This meeting is concluded. He turns and walks out without looking back. Rebecca sits in the conference room, her career in ashes, finally understanding the true cost of assumptions. 6 weeks later, Marcus flies again, same route, different crew. David watches from the gate as his son boards alone, backpack slung over one shoulder. Marcus turns at the jetway entrance and waves. David waves back, his throat tight. This time David books his own separate flight. This time Marcus is truly on his own. The flight attendant who greets Marcus is a young black woman with braids pinned into an elegant bun. Her smile is genuine. Welcome aboard, honey. Your seat is right up front. Can I help you with that bag? I've got it, thank you, Marcus says. He settles into 3A, the same seat now reclaimed, and pulls out a different book. This one's about oceanography. His interests shift like tides. The flight is uneventful. The meal service is smooth. When the attendant brings Marcus his pasta, she says, "Enjoy, sweetheart." And this time the endearment sounds like what it should be. Kind. Marcus texts his father from cruising altitude. Everything's fine. Food's good. Reading about the Mariana Trench. David, sitting in an airport 2 states away, stares at those words for a long time. Everything's fine. Such a simple statement, such a hard-won victory. At Horizon Airways headquarters, the new training program is in its 4th week. Not the sanitized corporate version that looks impressive in press releases, but real scenarios, uncomfortable role plays, mandatory bias testing with actual consequences. David stands before his executive team, Marcus's original boarding pass framed on the wall behind his desk. It's become a symbol not of what happened, but of what will never happen again if he has anything to say about it. We don't get to claim we're inclusive, while our employees profile children, David tells them. His voice is firm, clear, allowing no room for deflection. We don't get to have diversity statements on our website, while black passengers are questioned for existing in first class. Reform isn't a policy document. It's what happens when no one's watching. At 35,000 feet in seat 3A when a child asks for a meal. The executives nod. Some look uncomfortable. All pay attention. The changes ripple outward. New reporting systems, anonymous feedback channels, quarterly service audits broken down by passenger demographics. The data tells stories that policies tried to hide. It's not perfect. Nothing is. But it's better. David thinks of Rebecca sometimes, not with satisfaction, but with the complicated understanding that accountability is both necessary and painful. She's working at a hotel now, according to his HR department, front desk, starting over. He hopes she's learning. He doesn't know if she is. What he knows is this: his son flies without fear now. Marcus boards planes with his head high, his ticket valid, his right to be there unquestioned, and that, more than policies or protocols or press releases, is what change looks like. Marcus stands at his grandmother's front door 6 months after that first flight. His overnight bag sits at his feet. He's preparing to leave, to fly home alone again. His grandmother cups his face in her weathered hands. "You're so brave, baby." "I'm just flying, Grandma." "No." Her voice is firm. "You're living. You're taking up space. You're refusing to shrink yourself for anyone else's comfort. That's not just flying. That's freedom." Marcus thinks about her words during the drive to the airport, about what it means to belong, about the difference between being tolerated and being welcomed. The flight home is smooth. The crew is professional. The meal service is without incident. Everything that should be normal finally is. That night, David sits with Marcus on the back porch of their home. The stars are out, billions of them, distant and constant. Marcus's telescope sits beside them, pointed at nothing in particular. "Dad," Marcus asks, "do you think things are actually different now? Or do people just hide it better?" David considers the question seriously. Both, probably. Some people are genuinely learning. Some people are just being more careful. But you know what? Either way, you get to exist without being questioned. And that's progress. It doesn't feel like enough, it's not. But it's something. And sometimes something is where we start. They sit in comfortable silence, father and son, looking up at the same stars that shine on everyone. Regardless of who they are or where they sit or what assumptions others make, Marcus speaks again, quieter now. "I still think about her sometimes. The flight attendant. Me too. Do you think she gets it now? Do you think she understands?" David sighs. "I hope so. But that's not your responsibility, buddy. Her growth is her work. Your job is to keep being exactly who you are. Brilliant, kind, and unapologetically present in every space you choose to occupy." Marcus nods slowly. "Then, I want to be a pilot someday." David's breath catches. "Yeah? Yeah, I want to fly the plane. Not just sit in it." And there it is. Resilience blooming from pain, dreams expanding in spaces that tried to limit them. David pulls his son close. "Then you'll be a pilot. The best damn pilot Horizon Airways has ever seen." They laugh together under the stars, refusing to let cruelty define them, choosing instead to let it refine them into something stronger, because that's what survival looks like in a world that doesn't always make space for you. You make your own space. You claim your seat. You ask for your meal. And when someone questions your right to be there, you remind them with quiet dignity and unwavering presence that you don't need their permission to belong. You already do.